All right. Wow. God bless. God bless. All right. Is there an agnostic in the country that says God bless more than me? There's no way. Breaking all records. Okay. All right. So now that I got the lay of the land and thank you for coming out, let me go through this. This is fun because actually this is the first time I am ever doing this presentation. Okay. Woo. Okay. Okay, first, let me tell you guys something. A lot of you, if not all of you, know, I'm the host of the Young Turks, and we've got a TV show on Current, 7 o'clock Eastern, not a big deal. And we've got the online show, which a lot of you are familiar with. And I'm actually also the CEO of the Young Turks network, right, the TYT network. So that's actually 3 jobs, and I work honestly, about 14 hours a day on average. I don't want to exaggerate and say 15. I time it. It's about 14. Okay, and on Saturdays, I take it easy and I work from about 9 o'clock to 6 or 7. Okay, so now the reason I'm telling you that, not bragging, but whatever. Okay, I would rather not. Right, I'm telling you that on top of that, we're doing Wolf PAC. Not because I want to and gee, I don't work enough in the week, right? And my wife's not pissed enough at me. It's because I feel like I have no other choice. We've got to do this. Every single interview that I have, people say, okay, so what's wrong with politics? And I go through the whole thing, and here's the problem with Republicans, here's the problem with Democrats, etc. So what's the answer? Well, this is the answer. There is no other answer. I mean, this whole last 2 weeks, I've been doing coverage for the conventions at Current. That's why I'm in New York. We're doing it with Governor Ellie Spitzer, Governor Granholm, John Fugelsang, and a guy named Al Gore. And so I've had very long conversations with him, and he agrees. Not necessarily on Wolf PAC and our strategy, etc., but what does it come down to? It comes down to money in politics. There's no way around it. You think you're going to win on climate change if you don't get rid of the influence of money in politics? The oil companies are taking $4 billion a year in subsidies. Subs-a-fucking-Ds. Are you kidding me? They're the most profitable companies in the world. There is no justification for those subsidies. If you're a conservative, that should drive you crazy. That is the exact opposite of the free market. And they don't need a hand up. It's not like you need to subsidize them because, golly gee, they wouldn't do it otherwise, right? And the reason they have that is because of money in politics. And they're not going to let go. They're not. All of a sudden, you think Chevron's going to be like, hey, you know what? All those politicians we bought are bad. Let's do climate change, right? Let's fix that. They're not going to do it. So this is the only answer. And that's why I'm busting my ass, and I'm hoping you guys do the same so that we can actually save our democracy. And even before I get started with this, I want to tell you guys about my dream. My dream is that I'm retired, and I've relaxed, and I don't know how old I am, but I picture myself on a porch somewhere. I haven't decided whether I'm drinking lemonade or iced tea yet. But I'm in a rocking chair, and I'm with some friends on a front porch, and we're thinking about the old wars we won, and I have peace of mind because I did everything I could to try to save this democracy. And I want you guys to feel the same exact way. I want you to be on a porch somewhere when you're 55, 65, whatever it might be, and say, hey, you know what? I gave it my all, and can you believe it? We actually made a difference. Do you have any idea how good that would feel? So, given that, that's why I got to tell you about all this. So, now some of you, if you listen to the Young Turks, might know some of this stuff, but we put it all together so you get a sense of it. And speaking of Al Gore, this is no Al Gore presentation. Okay, we're just getting started, okay? So, hold on, let me pick up my papers first. I don't remember Al doing this in Inconvenient Truth. All right. Okay. So, here we go. Well, money in politics, that turns out to be important. You know that. All right. So, democracy. Everybody thinks we live in a democracy, right? But the real sad reality is that we don't really live in a democracy anymore. We have lost our democracy. And you might think, come on, really? Well, I'm going to prove it to you tonight. So what matters most in an election? What is the most determinative thing there is in an election, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, conservative or a liberal? Is it your issues? Is it your ideology? Well, it is none of those things. So if you wanted to determine, if you did a scientific test, okay, do conservatives win more? Does one idea matter more than another, give you a better chance of winning an election? You know, people are really motivated about, pick it. Let's say if you're a conservative, tax cuts. Is it tax cuts? Is that the magic formula for winning? Is it one of the parties? No, those are all over the board. There's only one thing that matters, money. Now, let me give you the numbers behind that. 93% of the time, the person with more money in a congressional race wins. 93% of the time. Now think about that. Who cares if you're a Republican? Who cares if you're a Democrat? Who cares if you're a libertarian? Who cares what ideas you came with? Ideas? We're talking about ideas? No, if you have more money, you win 93% of the time. That is by far the most determinative factor. So if you want to win, you got to go suck up to the donors to get that money. Now, I know what you're thinking. Come on, that's Congress. It's got to be better in the Senate. 94% in the Senate. 94%. So if you're a rational politician, what would you do? Now, look, if I'm rational, I don't get into politics because of this, right? But if you accept this and you want to win re-election, you say, hey, you know, my ideas are good. I care a lot about my ideology, but you know what? That's kind of optional because I got to get this. If I don't get this, I'm going to lose. If I'm the guy with less money, I'm going to win 6% of the time. 6% of the time. So, gee, I wonder what determines our elections. Now, does that sound like a democracy to you? Does it look like our votes are determining the winners? Is it our votes? It's not our votes. It's the goddamn money. It's the most obvious thing in the world. That's not a democracy. They have bought our government, lock, stock, and barrel. Let me tell you more. Now, New York loves gay marriage, right? I know, because they just passed the bill in the New York legislature saying that gay marriage is okay. Now, the Republicans have fought it tooth and nail for decades. But 4 of them recently flipped over and said, okay, you know what? You got me. Gay marriage it is. So, hey, look at that. Liberals can win. Progressives can win. What am I complaining about, right? Now, is it because they all of a sudden saw the light and they're like, oh, right. Who gives a shit? Like, it doesn't affect my marriage at all. Right. What was I thinking? Right? No. There was hedge fund managers. Here, in my notes, I even have their names. Paul Singer, Cliff Asness, funny name, Daniel Loeb. And now, bless their hearts, they're progressive on this issue. I wouldn't bless their hearts on other issues, trust me. But it turns out one of them is gay, another one has a son who's gay, etc., and they care about this issue. That's great. So what do? They bribed the 4 Republicans. They said, hey, you know what? We'll raise money for you, and you flip over to our side. And the Republicans said, oh, if I have more money, I'm going to win. Easy. Yay, gay marriage! So afterwards, they delivered. What New York actually loves is the $1.25 million that they raised for those 4 Republicans. They did a fundraiser afterwards for them, and I don't know if you guys know this, but the hedge fund guys turned out to have a lot of money. So they raised $1.25 million in a state. In a state race? Are you kidding me? They're going to crush their opponents. They're going to win for the next 40 years in a row. So they thought, oh, gay marriage, what do I give a shit? I mean, ideology, who cares? Republicans, Democrats, who cares? Get the money, keep winning. So even on issues where progressives win, it's not like, hey, boy, we got them on that one, or we had momentum, or we convinced them. When's the last time somebody got convinced in our democracy? When's the last time you saw on television, you looked on C-SPAN and, you know, it's Senator Al Franken or Senator Tom Coburn, and they're giving a speech, and another senator gets up and goes, hey, you know what, Tom, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that. You know what? I'm going to vote with you. The number of times that's happened in my lifetime is 0, right? They don't even listen to each other. Those speeches aren't even for you anymore. Tom Coburn's not giving a speech to his constituents in Oklahoma. He's giving a speech to his donors. Why do you think Mitt Romney proudly came out and said about his energy policy, I just met with the oil executives 2 days ago, and here's my energy policy that they back. Like, in the old days, when I was growing up in the 1980s, I think even in the 1990s, people would have said, what? You just told me you're totally bought by the oil companies, that your energy policy is based completely on what they told you. He's like, yeah, that's right. You know why he says that? Because then they turn around and go, good boy, and they give him more money. And he thinks, who cares what you think? If I get the money, I win. Now, on the presidential level, it's actually a little bit more nuanced than that, because the president is so well known that he can fight back. He has the bully pulpit, and he also has a ton of money. But if you're in Montana and the guy has more money, he's going to steamroll you. You're not going to get any free press. You don't have a bully pulpit. You're out there all on your own, and nobody's even going to hear your argument. Nobody's even going to hear your ideas. What they're going to hear is the 30-second ads your opponent ran because he raised more money. All right, let me depress you more. Well, this looks pretty bad. How are we going to fight back? Well, 87% of Americans believe that reducing corruption in the federal government is either extremely or very important. But wait a minute. I thought that Republicans and Democrats couldn't agree to anything, that we were incredibly polarized. That's what I've been told by the establishment media. But it turns out 87% of us agree on something. And what do we agree on? Reducing corruption in federal government. Now, wait a minute. Why would that be extremely important unless 87% of the country was convinced that our government is fundamentally corrupt? And by the way, let me ask you another question. When you turn to the establishment media, do you ever see them saying this? Do you ever see them saying, oh, by the way, your government is totally corrupt? It's just not a big deal, but just want to let you know. Anyway, we'll move on. After the break, rover lands on Mars. No, they do the exact opposite. They pretend that the government is not at all corrupt. They say, oh, well, here's Congressman Bob Smith. Oh, that's what you think? Oh, wow, that's so interesting. Like, 87% of us got it, even though the media didn't tell us. We still know it. We know it in our hearts, and we're right, but that's not all. 86%, also a high number. What is that one? That would be the number of people who think that politicians make decisions based off the interest of big campaign contributors. Now, a lot of you in this room probably think, of course! Of course! But that's because you're among the 86%. So when you ask someone in the media or someone in Washington, hey, do you make decisions based on donors? First of all, the politicians are like, oh, how dare you? I am the honorable gentleman from Nebraska. I do not make decisions based on donors. That is irrelevant. Well, 86% of the country thinks you're full of shit because you are, okay? And you think the media asked them that? If you asked Aaron Burnett, this is a random example, okay? But seriously, I mean, it's not her by herself at all. She's just a symbol of so much of the establishment media. And by the way, to be fair to CNN, they now have Soledad O'Brien and Ashley Banfield doing a great job in the mornings, challenging Republicans, challenging Democrats, doing old school journalism. So, but to use her, because I brought her up already, Erin as an example, you think she says 86% of the country doesn't believe you? Okay, let's talk about your campaign contributors, because apparently that's who you listen to. CNN, other than Soledad and Ashley, bless their hearts, I like those fighting women they got in the morning. So, but when's the last time you heard any anchor or news reporter say, hey, let's talk about your donations because we think, is that how you're making decisions? They think, oh, that's so impolite. Oh, my God, I'd never get invited to a cocktail party again. That's so uncivil. Let me tell you guys a story that I just got from my guys at the convention. So we sent an awesome A-team to the Republican and Democratic conventions. Michael Schur, our political correspondent, Lucas Lilliholm, the Lorax, as his producer, Dave Kohler, DK2000, and Aaron Wysocki was at the Republican one, but not at the Democratic one. Aaron runs our social media, really great guy, deals with the media for us, etc. And it's funny, I asked Aaron, Lucas, and Dave separately, not having talked to each other. They all had the same thing to say after the Republican convention. They said they felt a little sick in their stomach. And I said, oh, really? What did the Republicans do? And they said, no. It doesn't have anything to do with the Republicans. They were at the CNN grill. Now, I hate to throw CNN under the bus again. Again, it's not about them. It's about the idea and the culture, et cetera, right? And the people at the CNN grill are not just CNN. I've been at those conventions. I've been at those grills, et cetera. It's the media, the elite, and the politicians all together. And after talking with them for a while, they told me the same thing that I felt here in New York about, I guess, a year and a half ago. I was at MSNBC, as some of you might remember, and look, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling proud. You know, we're on this good network, and my agent comes by, and he takes me to a fancy breakfast. And it's like apparently the power place. And if you guys have watched the show for a while, you know I like celebrities. I think it's fun and stuff like that, right? So, and then you go in, and Jesus, it's like you're in a movie. You know, there's Harold Ford Jr., the former congressman from Tennessee, and then Tom Coburn works in. He's my random example of the day, but he was there. He's a senator, of course, from Oklahoma. Anchors, etc. It's like you walked onto a weird movie set or something, and you feel like, hey, I kind of made it. I'm at the power breakfast. It feels good. By the end of the breakfast, I wanted to vomit, and nobody did anything bad to me. It wasn't that. It was that I got a sense that these guys think it's a game. That like what you do on TV is like, oh, guy X goes out there and says blah, 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 blah. Guy Y says the opposite, and they have fun little game. And when the cameras are off and none of you are looking, they get together and they're the chummiest people on earth. But wait a minute. Now, some of these guys, and I know what turned me at the breakfast. It was John Bolton. John Bolton, former UN ambassador for Bush, one of the, craziest neocons in the country, helped to start the Iraq war, can't wait to start the Iran war. I mean, this guy started a war, certainly was a big factor in starting a war, that got over 100,000 civilians killed. Look, it's not a number. It's somebody's aunt. It's somebody's kid. Can you imagine your son? I got a son now. Can you imagine? And this guy helped to make that happen. And these guys are like, hey, John, how you doing? But no, wait a minute. It isn't a game. It isn't a game. These decisions matter a lot. Sometimes you help people. Oftentimes you ruin people's lives. Sometimes you get them killed. And so the guys at the conventions, Lucas, Aaron, etc., they felt the same thing at that CNN grill that I felt at that breakfast, that these guys are messing with our lives. And to them it feels like, oh, it's a day at the country club. They laugh, they giggle, who cares about the ideas? Who cares about the effects? We got to cut Medicare? That's a sad day for people on Medicare. Who gives a shit? They're not at the CNN grill, right? And it just makes me sick. So that's why the media doesn't ask, hey, what about your donors? Because the most egregious thing you can do if you're already in the club is to question the club. You can't say, hey, you know what? I don't think you're on the level. I don't think that's really your ideology. I think what you care about is the donors, right? Because that seems impolite. And if you're impolite to other people in the club, that is a mistake you cannot make, because then they're not as interested in being chummy with you, and that's a big, big problem in those circles. Killing over 100,000 civilians in Iraq, not that big a mistake. You get asked back on TV the very next day. You get taken seriously as if you're someone who's smart and we should pay attention to and make decisions based on. But if you're a little impolite to someone in the club, well, that's a problem. So now, the good news is 86% of the country is with us. They're not with them. So if we can somehow get to the people, they're ready. And 86% of the country, I got news for you, ain't liberals. Okay? It isn't just Democrats. It is Democrats, it is Republicans, it is libertarians. They're all sick of it, and they know it. It's the money. All right, now one more stat for you guys along these lines. 69%. Get a load of this. 69% of the country think that super PACs should be flat out illegal. Not like, hey, they need to be regulated. Wouldn't it be great if they disclosed their donors? No. These some of them bitches are buying our elections. Illegal. Wipe them off the face of the earth. Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, they agree. Do you know how hard it is to get 69%? I mean, I don't want you to get all carried away with the 86 and 87, like, oh, everybody gets it. 69% on any issue is nearly impossible. But 69% say wipe them off the goddamn board. They're buying our elections. The people are with us. It's not a Democratic or Republican issue. All right. Now, so the simplest thing in the world is the Disclose Act. What does that do? If you're going to fight money in politics, first step, if you know, the easiest step is, hey, all right, take all the money you want, let it be unlimited, etc. Just tell us where you got it. In fact, if you read the Citizens United decision, Justice Anthony Kennedy, who wrote the majority opinion, said, oh, it's all going to be okay because they're going to disclose their donors. And it's going to be, you know, free market of ideas, and we're going to know who had those ideas and who were pushing for that thing. And then, of course, the Republicans said, no, we're not. And for 30 long years, the Republicans said, oh, it's okay. George Will, I saw him. He's Mitch McConnell himself, et cetera. No, let us take unlimited money. It's okay because we'll disclose donors. So, okay, great. So we vote on it in 2010. Oh, shit, it failed. What the hell? Now, why did it fail? In the House, it looks like 219 are in favor and 206 opposed. Great, it passed the House. In the Senate, oh, it killed, 59-39. Oh, right, the Republicans filibustered it. They filibustered it, so you needed 60 votes. We fell 1 vote shy, okay? So, well, it's okay. They brought it back up in 2012. Oops, got much worse. They filibustered it again. Now it's only 53-45. We lost 6 senators. Because in that 2-year period, they're like, oh, this isn't going to pass. And it turns out, there's no consequences. The media never tells people that we're sucking up to these donors. They never know. We get the ads. You know the whole story. So now we lost 6 senators. This is the simplest one. This is the one where almost the entire country agrees. I haven't seen a poll on it, but I'd be surprised if it wasn't 98%. Okay? And we can't even get that passed. I tell you that because you got to understand Washington is not the answer. The virus has taken over Washington. It is thoroughly corrupted. We're not going to get these guys who can't pass the simplest measure to all of a sudden turn around and go, oh, yeah, constitutional amendment? Oh, yeah, I'm in. Not conceivable. But don't lose hope. I'm going to show you how we're going to do it. By the way, 77% say you should not cut Social Security under any fucking circumstances, okay? Under no circumstances. I don't care if the budget is a disaster. I don't care if you got a deficit the size of Mars. No, you don't cut Social Security, okay? Medicare, 74%. Don't cut it under any circumstance. Tax on the rich, 68%. Again, Democrats, Republicans, Independents. Raise taxes on the rich. So I'm sure that we are going to protect Social Security. Oh, by the way, oil subsidies. 70%. I can't believe it's that low, right? 30% are like, yeah, take my money. Give it to the richest guys in the country. Okay. That 30% you can sell almost anything to. But still an overwhelming majority, 70% say, no, don't give our taxpayer money to oil companies. They don't need it. So before I get to this slide, so what's happening? Oil subsidies, totally in place. Doesn't matter, the 70% of the country is in favor of it. Grand bargain, even if President Obama wins, they're definitely going to cut Medicare. They might cut Social Security. And there's a decent chance they will actually cut taxes on the rich, not raise them. Okay? If Romney wins, of course, right? So you got 77% of the people on your side. Who cares? Who cares? I got Sheldon Adelson on my side, right? And that's the way it works. And of course, Obama in the 2008 election, his number 2 donor was Goldman Sachs, right? And then what's really weird is that none of the Goldman Sachs senior executives got arrested. Weird. Okay, so I'll take questions at the end. So let me explain this slide. So Billy Tauzin is a former United States congressman. He was the lead negotiator in the Medicare Part D that George W. Bush got passed. And he negotiated with the pharmaceutical companies. And what's interesting is the pharmaceutical companies poured in at the top there. You see the $390 million going towards Congress? That's the amount of money that they spent lobbying. Part of that went to Billy Tauzin, his campaign, his fellow colleagues, etc. And they decide in their infinite wisdom, hey, you know what? Why don't we pass a law where the government cannot negotiate drug prices with pharma? That's the big drug companies. That's their law. Who would pass a law like that? Can you imagine if you cared about people? You said, okay, I got a great idea for you guys, all right? We're going to all pool our money together, and I'm going to take this drug company, and whatever price they want, I'm just going to give it to them. Okay, are you all in? I mean, you'd all say, are you nuts? Well, if we're going to get insurance or drugs or whatever, let's negotiate with them. And I say, no, you're not allowed to negotiate with them. You pay whatever the hell they want you to pay. If you had a democracy, wouldn't that guy be thrown out on his ass on the very next day? Okay? But they don't. He got the money. But Billy Tauzin is got a, as Clinton said the other night, he's got brass. So he said, that's not enough. Right after the law passed, right after, he went and became the chief lobbyist for pharma. Gets $2 million a year. How do you like that for a bribe? $2 million a year. Well, he did his job. They made billions. Oh, there it is at the end there. So what went back into pharma? $3.7 billion for that one provision about how we cannot negotiate with them. Of course they make $3.7 billion extra. We can't negotiate. They can charge us whatever they want. How insane is that? Now, if you're pharma, think about this, right? Who wouldn't do that deal? You're saying, wait a minute, I pay this son of a bitch $2 million, I give overall $390 million in lobbying, and I get $3.7 billion back? That's 10 to 1. I do that every single day. That's why they do it every single day. This is how Washington works in a nutshell. It's all bribes. And we get screwed. We're the one paying the $3.7 billion. That's coming out of our pockets. That's the drug prices we pay, extra drug prices we pay. Because our congressman like Billy Tauzin got bought. George W. Bush got bought. I wish it were just that, though. No. There was a guy running who promised us change we could believe in 2008. Now, let me be very specific about this. Now, we had this ad in the presentation. It's not running for some reason, but it's okay. I can explain it to you. So President Obama ran an ad called Billy in the 2008 campaign. Now, that's the one that sticks in my craw. I can't get past it. It was about Billy Tauzin, the guy I just told you about. And he tells the story, and he did a great job with that ad. In 30 seconds, tells the story of Billy and says, that's what's wrong with Washington. He's right about that. And he says, I don't want to play the same old Washington games a little better. I want to change the game. Change we can believe in. Okay, now you want to know what President Obama did on that same exact provision? Negotiated with Billy Tauzin. Made a deal where we cannot negotiate drug prices. Same exact deal. Unfortunately, that's the ad right there. It's even worse. So, no negotiation of drug prices, that's number 2. Number 1 is no drug reimportation. This is called a monopoly. And this is how they limit competition. This is how they kill the free market. If you're a conservative, you should be losing it over this. If you're a libertarian, you should want to start a revolution over this. We can't re-import drugs into the country. They say, oh, sure, you're going to get it from Canada. How unsafe. It's not unsafe. In Canada, they can negotiate. We can't negotiate in the U.S. So we think, all right, well, it's so much cheaper. It's the same exact drug. Why don't I just walk across the border with the drug? No, illegal. Illegal. We're going to stop it because Billy's got to make a deal. Billy made the deal with Bush. He made it with Obama. And number 3, this is actually worse. Under Bush, the first 2 were true. Under Obama, the extension of patents for data exclusivity. It's a complicated term, et cetera. But the bottom line is their patents where generic drugs can't compete with them got extended. It used to be 5 years. It's now 12 years. Another monopoly. Under Obama, I hate to break it to you, I voted for the guy. I argued for the guy vociferously, not just against McCain, but against Hillary, because I didn't want the establishment. And I thought Hillary was the establishment, and I thought he was change, right? But it got worse in this specific case. But this is not the only one. It's just representative. It's symbolic. I can show you 20 like this. It actually got worse under Obama. So what the hell happened to change we can believe in? What happened to changing the system? Unfortunately, President Obama is in the same system. He got success in the same system. He believes in the same system. He plays the same games. And I don't even blame him. I get angry from time to time, right? And if you've ever watched the show, you know that, right? But it's not about President Obama. It's not about Tauzin. It's not about Bush. It's if you set up a system where you have to have more money. If you don't have more money, you will only win 6% of the time. Well, everybody's got to do this. It is the rational thing to do. It's rational for the pharmaceutical companies to buy our politicians. It is rational for the politicians to get bought. The only way we change that equation is not by hoping that there is going to be some miraculous leader who is going to ignore the laws of logic and reason. It's not going to happen. They're not going to arise out of that system. They will be buried before they get there. For President of the United States, you know what you have to go through to get to that? And do you know that if you don't play ball, that they will deride you? The media will say, oh, outlandish, radical, Howard, whatever it might be. They're not going to let you get up there. So he got there because it is the system. If you don't change the rules, you can hope all you want. You could vote for change all you want, but you're going to get the same old, same old. Look, I talk about this show all the time because it's not just a good show. It's a show on Stars, stars Kelsey Grammer. But it's because of this line. And they've said it many times in that show, and every time they say it, it's like a gut punch to me. The donors say, we want a new young face because we'd like change on the outside, continuity on the inside. So there's a young politician, not Kelsey Grammer, another one in the show, and he comes in and, oh, change and hope. And it's not that obvious. They're more subtle than that, right? But that's what and he's got new ideas. And he goes and strikes the same exact deal with the donors because behind the scenes, if you have the money, you win, right? And so that's what we get. And that's the drug that we're fed. Change on the outside is the drug. It's on purpose so that people go, it's okay. It's okay. Look, you got change. Ha ha, no you didn't. It got worse. So let me depress you just a little longer, then I'll get to the hope, okay? 22,000%. What is that? In 2004, there was a tax holiday. It was a law that, of course, the Republicans pushed for, and of course, the Democrats said, oh, you twisted my arm. Okay, fine, you win. They said, we're going to repatriate the money abroad. All these corporations have billions, trillions abroad. And they said, okay, we don't want to pay the 35%. That's the corporate tax rate. We want to bring it back into the country. If we bring it back, we've got to pay 35. No, we're going to keep it abroad. But that's okay. We're going to bribe a bunch of politicians, and they're going to pass a law saying, oh, if you bring the money back in, you only pay 5%. Now, how many of you in this room pay 5% tax? I don't pay 5% tax. Who pays 5% tax? Only the richest corporations in the world. So when they put money in, and they did an analysis, brilliant analysis of this, how much money did they spend lobbying and campaign contributions, and how much money did they make in that difference between 35% and 5% because of that tax holiday law that was passed? They got a 22,000% rate of return on their investment. Buying a U.S. politician is the best investment in the country. So if you want to sell your products or you want to make money, don't worry about making a good product. Don't worry about beating the other guy. All you got to do is go buy a congressman, go buy a senator. You're going to get a 22,000% rate of return. In business, that is inconceivable unless you've bought the government. And that's exactly what they've done. All right, big oil. I'll go through this fast because you guys get it now. $1.2 billion on lobbying, $43.6 billion in subsidies. That sounds like a pretty good deal, right? If you have $1.2 billion, would you spend it to get $43.6 billion in return? Of course you would. Drilling in sensitive ecosystems is thrown in, and socialized externalities, which is, oh, if we spill it, that's your problem, not my problem. All right, so now you say, well, look, what can we do? We've been told that liberals suck. We can't get anything done. We're weak, right? Oh, liberals are pushovers. They're weak. Come on. You can't do anything with them. They're disorganized. It's like herding cats. So obviously you're ineffective. You can't do anything, right? That's interesting. What is this? Consumer protections. Look at this list. National Traffic and Motor Vehicle Safety Act. Oh, that was passed by liberals during a Republican president. But that Republican president, he was probably a liberal, right? Richard Nixon. Okay. Occupational Safety and Health Act. Consumer Products Safety Act. Freedom of Information Act. The Environmental Protection Agency. Richard Nixon started the EPA. Why? Because he wanted to? No. He passed all these laws because he had to. Because liberals were so strong, so overwhelming, so organized that he felt he didn't have a choice. The guy who thought, I don't give a damn about any of the rules or the laws, I'll break into the Watergate, I'll try to spy in on my opponents, I'll do all the dirty tricks, thought, well, the liberals are so strong I can't fight them. And he passed all these laws. Okay, so between 1930 and 1978, when we had Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the Great Society, and then all the laws in the 1970s, liberals were strong, effective, invincible. Raiders, Naders, I don't know how many of you remember that. Ralph Nader, before he became the guy who cost us the 2000 election, ran roughshod in the 1970s. Here's a progressive guy who today would be called radical's radical. Came in and said, I'm going to pass these laws. Seatbelts, you're going to need seatbelts. Car companies are like, are you nuts? It's going to cost us millions of dollars. Hell no. And he beat them with a stick. Okay? Why? Invincible. They tell you liberals are weak. Bullshit. From 1930 to 1978, we ran this country, and by the way, unparalleled economic growth. Unparalleled job growth. #1 in the world, the powerhouse of the world. We built the greatest middle class known to man. That's what liberals and progressives did. So what changed? What happened in 1978? So I didn't know this. So, and I'm lucky I have a talk show. I have all these guests. I ask them questions to try to find out. So I'm talking to Ralph Nader one day, and he said it all changed in 1978. That's the first time I had heard the specific date of 1978. I said, Jesus Christ, Ralph, what happened? Right? And he said, Tony Coelho happened. I said, who the hell's Tony Coelho? It turns out he's a Democratic congressman. And Ralph explained the Republicans had started taking corporate money. Now, they always took some sort of corporate money, but the laws were different back then, okay? But the laws had changed, as I'm about to explain to you. And Tony Coelho came to the rest of the Democrats and said, hey, we can also take corporate money. It's okay. We'll be good liberals anyway. We'll be good progressives anyway. Let's just take the corporate money and see how it turns out. Well, let me show you how it turned out. Right around 1978, the charts diverge. So the middle class, the bottom fifth, stagnates. The middle fifth, stagnates. The highest fifth goes up 95%. So if you're in the highest fifth, you're doing damn good, right? Top 1%, 281% increase in their after-tax income. You see that chart? That's what happened after 1978. Wait, there's more. This is the share of the top, share of the income for the top percentile, okay? So this is all compared to one another, right? So and what's amazing, now you might be used to the end of that chart where the top 1% takes off and they have a huge percentage of the income, right? But are you used to that period right there from about, 1940 or so to 1978? That part is the part where we were all even. We were equal. Everybody was growing. It's not like the rich weren't growing. It's not like the middle class wasn't growing. We were all growing. We were doing great. And we had equality of opportunity. And then what happened? They changed the laws in 1978. The top 1% takes off like a rocket and leaves us behind. So, what happened? I don't know how many of you have heard of this. It's called the Powell Memo. Lewis Powell was a lawyer, and he wrote a memo for the Chamber of Commerce. And he said, hey, you know what? We're having trouble reaching the politicians as well as we would like. Part of the problem is the laws. I have a brilliant idea. We should target the Supreme Court. Because if the Supreme Court would rule our way, then we will be able to funnel the money to the politicians easier. Okay? The problem is right now there's campaign finance laws. We can't give the politicians money. We just can't do it. Supreme Court won't let us. So let's go by the Supreme Court. Richard Nixon took Lewis Powell and put him on the Supreme Court. He's like, oh, that's a brilliant memo. Great idea on buying the Supreme Court. You're in. He is the deciding vote in Buckley v. Vallejo in 1976. Deciding vote. That's where they decide money equals speech. So, First Amendment rights, you got money, you can spend as much as you like. Now, it doesn't apply to corporations yet. It just applies to people, actual human beings. 1978, the case that very little people talk about, but the most important one. First National Bank of Boston versus Bilotti. Corporations are people, and hence they have First Amendment rights. Corporations being people was decided over 100 years ago. It wasn't really decided by the Supreme Court. Al Gore talked about this last week on air. It was actually a clerk of the court who actually used to work for the railroad companies who had brought the case. They fixed it. But it didn't really matter that much because it didn't really apply to our politics. But in Bilotti, they said, since corporations are human beings, which every time I say it, it seems like, how could anybody possibly believe that? They have First Amendment rights, hence they can spend money in politics. Now later, Citizens United would just take the lid off. You know, they'd take Bilotti and put it on steroids and said, unlimited money in politics. But Citizens United was just the end. It wasn't the beginning. This is the beginning, where they say, it's okay, spend money in politics. And then the corporate money starts to flood in. It floods in every way imaginable. Ads, contributions, lobbying. You know what? Orrin Hatch's son, a lobbyist, makes, I think last time I read, about $150,000 a year. Norm Coleman's wife gets a job, etc. The money just starts pouring in from everywhere because money is now speech and corporations can spend it on politicians. What happens? Here we go again. 1978, the charts diverge. Average hourly wage, stagnating. Average hourly compensation, stagnating. But wait a minute, look at that. Productivity is soaring throughout that time period. Your compensation didn't stagnate because you weren't productive. You were enormously productive, except you didn't get the reward for it. You didn't get the income. You didn't get the benefit of your hard work. Productivity soared. And where did it go? It went back to the top 1% because they fixed the laws. And they said, you know what? We are going to put money in these politicians' hands, and that extra productivity, you earned it, you worked for it, who cares? I'm taking it. I'm taking it. So here's the solution. We fight fire with fire. Now, according to Citizens United, according to all these decisions I talked to you about, we can spend unlimited money in politics. That means it's not just them that could do it, we can do it too. So, we can fight money with money. Now, first thing I would think if somebody was telling me this, how the hell are we going to compete? These corporations are gigantic. They have an unlimited amount of money. There's no way we could raise enough money to compete with them. But here's the beauty of it. We don't have to compete with them on every issue. If you disperse your money to environmental issues, war issues, oil issues, pharmaceutical issues, etc., you will get creamed. You will get destroyed. But if you concentrate all of your money, as these two groups have, you can achieve unparalleled success. Now, I point these guys out because Ari Berman did a terrific article in The Nation a long time ago. We had him on the show. And he had looked into why is AIPAC and the NRA so successful. So the first thing that you would think of is they've got more money than the other lobbies. And as Ari immediately found out, that's not the case. These guys seem all-powerful in Washington, but the reality is they actually don't have that much more money. So how'd they do it? If you cross the NRA or AIPAC, they come to get you. They say, we're going to put your head on a stick. We're going to take all our money, and we're going to make sure you never return to Congress. And once they put 1, 2, 3 heads on a stick, every politician was scared to death of them. So they say, oh, wait. Come again on guns? Say that again? Oh, you're against guns? All right, all right. No, it's no big deal. It's just you'll find other lines of work. They take all their money, they pour it into certain races, and they send a message. Now, the great news is if they can do it, we can do it. But our one issue is to take money out of politics. Now, especially on a state-by-state level, do you know how much money it takes to win a state race in Massachusetts? You know, all these numbers are thrown out, millions, billions, et cetera. 40,000. The average winning race for the House of Representatives in Massachusetts is 40,000. Okay? And if we went around state by state and said, hey, listen, I got news for you. If you don't vote our way, you can go find other work. Okay? And they say, oh, but that's not fair. Why are you looking at me in Montana? Why aren't you looking at the guy in Wyoming? Why aren't you looking at Bob? Bob has the same voting record. They say, that's a sad day for you, isn't it? Okay, we're not looking at Bob, and we're not looking at Wyoming. We're looking at your ass. And you're going to vote our way, or you are done, son. You pack your bags, and I don't care if I don't do anything else with my life, but I'm going to make sure you are eliminated. Okay, you do that once, you'll scare the shit out of them. You do that twice, you've got everybody's attention. You do it 3 times, all of a sudden they say, what? I hate money in politics. Money in politics, I'm on the phone 4 or 5 hours a day trying to raise money. I hate that. Yeah, of course I'm on your side. Just whatever you do, don't hit me. Okay? So, that's called, you know who that is? It's my friend Achilles. And that's his heel right there. Okay? That's their Achilles heel. We can use the same exact tactic that they use against us, against them. Now, they can't stop us. What are they going to do? Say, oh, no, you're not allowed to spend money on that? Well, too bad. Supreme Court's on our side. Take it out with Lewis Powell. So that brings us to Wolf PAC. That is the whole point of Wolf PAC, to have a super PAC that fights back, that says we've had enough of you guys coming for us, taking our wages, passing laws against us, forcing us to pay $3.7 billion extra to the pharmaceutical companies, taking our tax money and giving it to the oil companies. We've had enough. There's a new sheriff in town. Now we're coming for you. Now, I have this picture in here of one of the first, it's not my living room. You know, we started the show in the living room. But this was the really small radio office right after that. That's me. I don't know if any of you remember Jill Pike, one of our former co-hosts, and J.R. Jackson, a young intern at the time from USC. Okay? Much older now. I show you this picture because when we were in that room, and by the way, that chair I'm sitting in, we literally found it on the side of the road. Okay. They told us that our dream was not doable. The same exact thing they tell us every day now with Wolf PAC. Oh, you're crazy. That's not doable. And at the time, we had, miraculously raised $25,000, and we spent it mostly on radio equipment. Mics, the headsets, the ISDN line, which cost us the most amount of money, a mixer, etc., right? They're like, how the hell are you going to do a show on $25,000? I mean, if there was, at the time, if you raised money for a venture, a media venture, you can go to VCs, et cetera. But, if you didn't raise $1 million, they'd laugh you out of the room. There's no way you can do anything without $1 million. But realistically, you got to raise $2 million, $5 million. I said, no. We're actually going to have the largest show. They said, you're going to have the largest show with $25,000. I said, yeah, that's what we're going to do. They said, come on, get out of here. That's not doable. So, impossible, undoable, unrealistic. Where are we now? 750 million views. Actually, I just checked today, 796 million views. 30 million views a month, except I just checked today, it's actually 32 million views a month now. Over 1 million views on YouTube alone. Doesn't count our website, doesn't count the TV show, doesn't count everywhere else around. Over 1 million views a day on YouTube alone. That is larger than almost any cable show in the country. Okay? Rachel Maddow does a terrific show. I love her. She's on MSNBC. Okay? I know she's on it, but I love her. Okay? She gets about 1 million on a good day. Okay? Oftentimes less. Sometimes on a really good day, a little more. Okay? How in the world is sitting in that tiny little room with only 25,000, most of which was immediately spent on the equipment. Could we imagine that we could get 1 million views a day, larger than the largest show on MSNBC, which is now the second biggest cable news show in the country? How in the world could you do that? Because we had a plan, we believed, and we stayed together. You see JR there? Still with us. Jesus, been with us for over 10 years. Dave Kohler, 10 years. Ben Mankiewicz, 10 years. Michael Schur, 10 years. We stayed together, we fought together, and we believed. The number one thing you need is the belief that you can do it. If you have that, the amazing thing is it turns out you can do it. So, we're now the #1 online news show in the world. Let me tell you how we do it for Wolf PAC. Now, let me quickly tell you, if you haven't seen it, let me tell you the amendment, let me tell you our strategy, and explain why this is so important and why this helps us make it doable, okay? So, the amendment is corporations are not human beings. They do not have the constitutional rights of United States citizens. And we will publicly finance all elections. Because if the donors are writing the paychecks, they're going to do what the donors ask them to do. If we're writing the paychecks, then at least we got a shot that they might actually listen to us, that they might actually be our representatives, right? So take the donors out of the equation, take the lobbyists out of the equation, and we got a chance. Okay. So now the problem is, I already told you, Washington is corrupted. The virus is taken over. Now, a normal way that you pass a constitutional amendment is you get 2/3 of Congress to vote yes, and then you take it to the states, and 3/4 of the states ratify, right? But we can't do it in this case. We can't even get 60% of the Senate to agree to the Disclose Act. There's no way you can get 2/3 of Congress. They're too corrupted. Let's say Progressive Change Campaign Committee is a wonderful progressive group. Adam Green runs it. He's really smart, really effective. And from time to time, he wins, and they get progressive members of Congress. For example, Tom Perriello in Virgil Good's old seat. Virgil Good is a horrible, bigoted Republican from Virginia, and Stephanie Taylor, who's one of the heads of Progressive Change Campaign Committee, was integrally involved in getting his ass kicked out of Congress. They brought in Perriello. He's a good progressive. He lasted 2 years. Okay. Either the money comes and swamps you over, or if you stay long enough, you get corrupted, right? So we can't catch up quick enough in Washington. But there is a second way to amend the Constitution. Now, it is very rare, but it is also actually more realistic and more doable. You have to get 2/3 of the states to call for a constitutional convention. And then, in the convention, you get an amendment. And then you take it to the states, just like the other process, and 3/4 ratify. Now, when you mention convention, first of all, a lot of the scholars and the law professors flip out. They're like, oh my God. I literally was in New York at a meeting of constitutional law professors. I don't know why they let me in the room. Wound up regretting it. They did. And I talked about this idea, and I said constitutional convention, and they said, literally, one of the professors, old guy who, disaster. Okay. Why? He says, oh my God, you'd open up a can of worms that could change the Constitution. Yeah, but first of all, what we already have is a disaster. I already showed you, we don't even have a democracy anymore. How does it get worse? Okay, second of all, you can have a limited convention on just this issue, okay? So you don't have to worry about, oh my God, what if they bring in abortion, etc. Third of all, who cares? They can bring in abortion all they like. You're not going to get 3/4 of the states to ratify a pro-life amendment. It is impossible. California, Rhode Island, Vermont, New York, etc., they would never stand for it. There's only one issue that 3/4 of the country agrees on. It's that our politicians are corrupted by big money, and we got to get money out of politics. It is the only thing that 3/4 of the country agrees on, okay? So how in the world are we going to do it? Well, this is the beauty of this idea. You can't, it's not like the Disclose Act. You take a vote in 2010, you wait, you take a vote 2 years later, oh shit, it got worse, right? You do it one state at a time. You put them on the board. We all work together, whether it's here in New York or it's in the Connecticut group or it's the New Jersey group, and you target these legislators who, by the way, are not used to being targeted by a mass movement And if you show up 100 people, 200 people in a state house meeting, you will blow their doors off. Like, Jesus, what happened here? And you will definitely get their attention. If on top of that, you say, hey, listen, I got a carrot and I got a stick. Which one would you like? You will get their attention. We don't have to take all 50 states at the same time. In fact, we only need 34 states, but we certainly don't need all 34 at the same time. The minute we put one on the board, we put Connecticut on the board, here's what's going to happen. What? Oh, damn, these guys are serious, right? And once Rhode Island sees that Connecticut did it, they're like, wait a minute, that doesn't seem so unreasonable. They did it in Connecticut. And you know what? Do I want 40,000 spent against me, or do I want 40,000 on my side? Well, I like my seat, and there's 200 people in the room, and they seem pretty angry. And you know what? I actually kind of agree, because I'm in the 86% who thinks that there's too much money in politics. You put Rhode Island on the board. If you put 3 states on the board, you will catch the attention of this entire country, and you will light a fire that cannot be put out. And then, if you put a red state on the board, everybody is going to flip the fuck out. Because then they're going to realize, oh my God, this isn't just a Democratic thing. This isn't a liberal pipe dream. It turns out conservatives hate the money in politics. They hate the crony capitalism. They hate that our government is bought. They don't believe their politicians even more than we don't believe our politicians. They took out Bob Bennett in Utah. Bob Bennett, who voted straight conservative. Nearly 100% voting record. They're like, we don't trust you. You're a goddamn corrupt politician. Off you go. Okay? Did they do that because they wanted somebody more right-wing? No, they did that because they got this gut feeling that they're getting screwed, that the establishment is screwing them, and that old senators like Bob Bennett are part of that establishment screwing them. You think we can't get Montana? Montana is the state that just fought the Supreme Court saying, you got to let us make our own laws here in Montana. In Montana, we've had a law for over 100 years saying, we know what happened when we let corporations put unlimited money in our elections. They bought the whole government. It happened over 100 years ago. This is not a new process. The minute you allow it, they do it. We don't want it in Montana. Supreme Court ruled against them. Didn't even listen to they didn't even issue a written ruling. They just said, get, and they chased them away. Now, if you go to Montana and you say, hey, you want to help out and get money out of politics? My guess is they're going to say, hell yeah. You will light the country on fire. 86% of the country is on our side. They just need to know that we're out there, that we're fighting for them, and they will join the fight. This is not some sort of fringe issue. This is not something where like, oh, I don't know about the whales. Is it a good thing or a bad thing if we, I don't know what we're doing with the whales, okay? I don't know what's happening with dolphin-free tuna, right? Do I have to be a vegan? No. All you got to do is, if you agree with us, after we do the really, really hard work, and we put a couple of states on the board, when we go to Nebraska, when we go to California, just show up. Just next time there's a meeting in the House or the Senate in your state, come along with us, okay? Or, if you can help, chip in $5. Or call one of your congressmen and join the movement. And they will, and they will. Now, look, I brought up the Young Turks show for a reason as well. Not just because I can show you that it can be done, but this is exactly how we did it. When we were scraping and fighting and we were trying to find a way, the first place we got on there was on Sirius Satellite Radio. You know how we got on there? I called somebody at Sirius, and I said, okay, who's the program director? They're like, I don't know. And they referred me to somebody else. They referred me to someone else. They were a mess when they started. Eventually, I found a guy, and I said, all right, how do I get on? He's like, man, all right, I'm managing this channel. Send me a CD. Let's see what happens, right? So I sent him a CD. He's like, I guess it's good enough. I'll have him run it. Boom. We put out the next letter we send to anybody else. Young Turks, Sirius Satellite Radio. Okay? We're on there, right? And we stayed, and we stayed, and we stayed. And then, I don't remember if it was a year later, a year and a half later, they finally got a really good program director, has a lot of experience, and he calls me. He's like, turns out you're on our station. I said, yeah, that's right. He's like, why don't you come in and let me decide whether I should keep you on there, right? And he brings me into New York. I was in L.A. He listens to a couple things. He says, yeah, you guys are pretty good. Okay. In fact, you're so good, I'm going to give you the morning show. Why? Because we showed up, because we came to fight. And then we went to Kansas, Wichita, Kansas, liberal show in Wichita, Kansas. We were on the weekends. We went from number 16 in the market to number 1, okay? And then we went to Oregon and with Seattle. And every time you put a victory on the board, people go, oh, wow, you're number 1 in Wichita. How the hell did that happen? Okay, maybe you can work in Minnesota. I didn't know that. Okay, let's try you in Minnesota. And then when we went online, you know, it was so hard to get to 3 million views. I mean, people don't know this. They don't know that 3 million is kind of a magic mark, but we've been in it for 7 years now in online video. So we know all the tricks of the trade, and we know what the barriers are. And it turns out, for whatever reason, roughly speaking, it's 3 million views. It's so hard to get there. You're swimming in an ocean. You're swimming against the whole world. Everybody's put. Do you know they put up an hour of video? No, some amazing number, like an hour of video every second on YouTube. Or so it's amazing how much video there is on YouTube, and you got to swim against that entire tide to get to 3 million. But you know what happens when you get to 3 million? It gets easier. You hit 6 million before you know it. And then it picks up speed as you go along. TYT Sports is a channel that we put together a couple of years ago, and I remember a couple of guys on my team, who shall remain nameless, said, oh, it's not going to work. We don't have the rights to any of the clips. We're not going to be able to put it together. It's not going to work. I said, trust me, it's going to work, okay? They hit 3 million. Next thing you know, they hit 6, they hit 8, they hit 10, they hit 20. It's our second biggest channel now, okay? It's the same exact thing in politics. After you hit Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Hawaii, and if God willing, we get, if he exists, if he's willing, if we put Montana or another red state on the board, you're going to be shocked at how quickly we get to 34. Now, they say, oh, well, these processes sometimes take decades. That's true. And sometimes they take 18 months. One of the amendments passed in 18 months, from start to finish. Well, it turns out if 86% of the country agrees with you, sometimes you take off like a rocket. But the hardest part is putting these states on the board. And it could be any 3 states. It could be any red state. It could be New York. It could be New Jersey. It could be Connecticut. It could be someone in this room that does it, that gets us on the board and gets us fired up and gets us more momentum that we need. Remember 86%. Have I mentioned that before? Oh. That's the end of the presentation.